Don't forget that today's show is brought to you by Speed Wheels. Find us at www.bondspeedwheels.com or on Facebook at Speed Wheels. Remember, our wheels are made in America right here in Anaheim, California, and every wheel is custom built to order. Our forged billet wheels are built street tough. Speed Wheels. So welcome to another edition of Street Rod and Custom Radio, where we bring you the parts, the people, and the stories behind our automotive hobby. It's right here where we talk about hot rods, rat rods, street rods, race cars, muscle cars. If it's got wheels, you know we're going to talk about it. If it goes fast, for sure we're going to talk about it. I'm your host, Brad Fanshaw, and this week we're coming to you live from Lincoln, Nebraska, with Speedway Motors. And I'm going to tell you a little bit. Some of you already know that my history before I was partners with Boyd Coddington and was building hot rods out in California, that I was a Midwestern guy. And I came from Omaha, Nebraska. I went to high school and college back here, and all the speed shops that were back here and all of these, cruising and the street racing and the drag racing and the dirt track racing, everything that went on back here, we all would kind of come to this one location in Lincoln, Nebraska. I would roll in with my friends, and we would kind of oogle and ogle at all the cool things. And I got to tell you, there was one motor that used to always catch my attention, and it was in this shop that was right here in Lincoln. It was an all-polished ZL1 big block motor. And you know what? I've come back to the place to find that motor and to find the man who created everything and the reason that motor was sitting there. I'm at Speedway Motors in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my guest this week is Speedy Bill Smith, the founder and the man who has created this empire. And we're not only at where Speedway Motors is headquartered, we're in their museum, and it is spectacular. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Fun to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. It's such a great thing to get you out and have you come out to the museum today so that we could talk about how Speedway Motors came to be, your career in racing and sponsoring cars, and it's
building cars.
Building cars. I mean, but you sponsored and built, didn't you?
Sponsored a few, but built 90% of them.
Great. That's, you know what?
Hands-on.
And that's what's great, and that's what gave you kind of the, your whole catalog empire. It was because you had that knowledge and you had that base from doing it yourself, right?
Well, to understand a book, whether it's the Bible or whatever you have your interest in life, you better know everything from the front cover to the back cover.
And you know it page by page, don't you?
World according to Bill.
So, I mean, let's just jump right into it. I mean, Speedway Motors today produces a massive catalog of parts for the hardcore builder, the hardcore racer, everything that they might need. But it really started with you jumping on a motorcycle and doing some racing back in the 40s, didn't it?
Well, I was young, and we all go through hatching and dying. There's in the period in between. Everything that's living does that. The tree in your front yard, or the Easter Bunny, or whoever it is. So I had a lot of interest from the time I was 14. I was exposed by a gentleman that lived a couple blocks from me in collecting junk, and he had collected a 1917 Model T pickup truck. And so I was making $0.25 an hour if I would trade him and take it out and trade rather than money. If I took it out in money, it was 15 cents. So I got my first Model T Ford by working for him, $0.25 an hour, and it was $17.50. You couldn't drive in Nebraska until you were 16, but you could sneak around the back roads. So I learned to drive the Model T. I learned to keep it running. I learned to that it had water in the radiator, and when it got cold, you better put some alcohol in it so that it didn't freeze, and learned all the things that you need to know about driving an automobile.
So you got the baseline and got all the tricks of the trade, learned all the things, and cars weren't as complicated back then, were they?
To some extent, no, but to many, far more complicated. Because a Model T has 3 pedals on the floor.
The operational end of it, yeah. And
a Model T has a very quick steering. I tried to teach my cousin how to drive my Model T. We ended up on its side in the ditch.
Like a lot of Model Ts did on their side in the ditch, didn't they? And we're going to have more with Speedy Bill Smith right here at Speedway Motors when we come back to Street Rod and Custom Radio, so don't go away. We're back. You're listening to Street Rod and Custom Radio. I'm your host, Brad Fanshaw, and don't forget, you can find me on Facebook at Bondspeed Brad Fanshaw, and you can find one of our sponsors who helped bring this show today, Barrett-Jackson, the world's greatest collector car auctions. Visit them at barrett-jackson.com. We're here in Lincoln, Nebraska today, and I am at Speedway Motors, and I'm with the legendary Speedy Bill Smith, the man who has brought this sport to another level through his love and his enthusiasm for not only racing, but for hot rods and for the whole automotive hobby. And before I go any farther, I want to make sure that you know where to find out more about Speedway Motors. You can find them at speedwaymotors.com. So go there, check out their website. But when we left, Bill, we were talking about, kind of getting right down to the roots of things, the 40s, and you were just getting into it. You were learning the basics and learning how to maintain your car. But it seems like your enthusiasm for the automobile and for racing was about as fast as your cars were on the track, because you jumped right into it. And one of the things that I read was that you stated that your enthusiasm, I want to make sure I get this right because I don't want to offend you, but that your enthusiasm for racing maybe wasn't as good as your skill level, your skill level wasn't as good as your enthusiasm. So early on you realized that maybe building the cars and hiring out some drivers was a better thought?
Well, I was doing some things that didn't make my tummy feel good. I was an only child, and I had a tough love mother that lived to be 99, so we always enjoyed each other tremendously. And I was telling her that I wasn't going racing when I took my motorcycle to the county fairs around on Sunday afternoon, that I was there to view. I was lying to her, and it didn't make me feel good. So I was pretty good at motorcycle racing, but then when I tried roaring roadsters, and we killed 2 people at one time in Council Bluffs, Iowa, decapitated them.
Wow.
I thought maybe I had better, because I had busted the car up a couple of times when the roadsters first started in Hastings, Nebraska, before the 40s. No, it was in the 40s, late 40s. But I could spend more effort building the car and making the car go faster and stay together. And if it was a 10-lap race, we finished it. If it was a 20-lap race, we finished it. A lot of fallout in the early days because of different knowledges and so forth. So you just honed your interest, and you didn't say, well, I'm going to go play golf. I should be changing the bearings in that flathead Ford motor or something like that. So you have to stay pointed, I guess, is what, for lack of a better word, with all your enthusiasms. And how long you stay pointed at that could be a week, could be a month, but it's been 62 years for myself.
So you basically took your enthusiasm and you focused it in the direction of building those cars and and being successful in that area so that you didn't have to go lie to Mom, right?
I didn't want to lie to Mom, and I'm a competitor. I was a lover, not a fighter, so I couldn't punch the guy if we were arguing. So I had to do it in a different venue.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, when I first moved to Omaha, there were still some remnants across the river over in Council Bluffs, and when you brought this up, it kind of brought it up in the back of my head, of an old racetrack right there in the river. Was that called Playland Raceway?
Playland Park.
Yeah, and the remnants of that were still there, long gone now. But so that would have been one of the places where you raced. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my good old drivers, Tiny Lund, got married at Playland Park in front of the grandstand.
Really?
Where the people came to watch the race, not a marriage. Now, they don't do things like that too much anymore, but a lot of crazy things and explaining times to people are very tough. We didn't have interstates. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have television. All of these things that bring awareness to you or the public, it makes it hard to explain.
Well, let's try a little bit of that. Like, for instance, when we come back, I want to talk about what it was like. I mean, what kind of an atmosphere you built these cars in, and because you brought up a really good point. Now today, these teams have these beautiful shops, and even a lot of the independent drivers have, these teams have these incredible shops and facilities. And you guys really had some basics, which you've got represented here in the museum upstairs. I remember seeing some things there. And when we come back on Street Rod and Custom Radio, we'll talk more with Bill from Speedway Motors right here in Lincoln, Nebraska.